All right. Shalom, Israel. Preach also 5,000 Kasar Pakad. Out here with the ISUPK, we started at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, in the Commanding General Yohana. Today, we do something a little bit different. Series I'm going to be running. It's called the RN Book Club, or the Real Nigga Book Club. This is something that is important for our people. There's a lot of studies out there that says, Black people don't read or don't like reading, and they make it seem like there's something wrong with our people, our community, for not always reading. Now, we know as priests and prophets of the Lord in the UPK, our job is to come and to study and show ourselves approved. What is that? 1 Thessalonians 2 and 15, 21, I believe, right? That's what we have to do, is study and show ourselves approved. However, many of our people in our nation, they will not go into these records and this history and read these books. But our job as priests and prophets is to bring this information to our people and to let them know that there's nothing wrong with you for that, right? European society, white culture, the educational system may try to put our people in a light that there's something wrong with us for not being a reading people, when that was not our culture. We were a storytelling people. We were people that sit down. You have certain ones that go in and read the scriptures, the scribes, you understand, and bring back the stories and tell them to the people as a group. And so 90% of human history, I would say even more than that, the majority of people around the world didn't read. We learned from each other by example, trades, all these different things. And so this is an opportunity for me to come out and read some of this information from these books. And we're going to have a real nigga book club. You understand? We're going to go through some of these books that are bedrock to the UPK, but we went out and found this information that tried to be hidden, that helps Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans come together. And that's why we'll first go to the most important book, the realest niggas book ever is the Bible. Ezekiel chapter 37. And I'm going to start at verse 16, verse 15. The word of Yahweh came again unto me, saying, Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel his companions, and join them one to another into one stick. They shall become one in thine hand. And so that's what this book right here is about. This information in this book, Black Indians, is letting us know that these are the two sticks. When we say Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are the true Israelites, we're talking about Blacks, so-called Negroes that came over here on the transatlantic slave trade, and Native Americans, Latinos of Native American descent. We are uniting two tribes of people, or two people that think they are separate tribes, and bringing them back to one. We have united countless times over the years, and when they take this history away from us, it makes our job a little bit more difficult to show that we are one people, when everyone in a Black household in America, every Negro in America says they have Native American ancestry. And everyone that comes from Latin America, from the Caribbean islands, the so-called Puerto Ricans, Cubans, they all agree that they have Native American ancestry. So if we can put the pieces of the puzzle together to show that we all have Israelite ancestry, and that the Blacks and Natives come from ancient Israel, everything about us has been together since the days of the Bible. then we can start to bridge the gap and unite us as one. In this picture right here, if you can see it too well, it's a young sister. She got the fringes. You understand? Long robes and garments. They try to say that all of our Native American women were running around naked. That's not the case. She was a glorious and modest sister, and she got the fringes at the bottom. You understand? That is our Israelite culture. My grandmother told me her grandmother had two long braids because she was a Native American. That's the same thing you seeing with this sister right here. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and read. Hopefully, this audio can play in the background. That's how I'm gonna read. So, introduction. Black Indians, question mark. The very words make most people shake their heads in disbelief or smile at what appears to be a joke, a play on words. No, no one remembers any such person in school, text, history book, or Western novel. None ever appeared. Yet they lived and roamed all over the Americas. Their story began with the first European landings in the New World, reached from New England to Brazil, and continues today. The number of so-called African Americans with an Indian ancestor was once estimated at about 1/3 of the total. In Latin America, the percentage is much higher. This means that an important page in history has been missing. Three great races, red, white, and black, built the Americas together. Their contributions and their interrelationships have filled libraries with scholarly studies, history texts, and novels. The relationship between Europeans and Native Americans and between Europeans and Africans have been thoroughly studied, but one relationship has not. Conspicuous by its neglect is the relationship on this soil between red and black people. In 1920, historian Carter G. Woodson called it one of the longest unwritten chapters in the history of the United States. He wondered if Africans did not find among Indians one of their means to escape from slavery. Like, did they not ever think to reach out to the Native American brothers to get away from being enslaved? Of course they did. This would be considered common sense to do that, right? Dr. Woodson's chapter still remains unwritten. His quote-unquote escape theory hardly explored. This book needs to tackle both the chapter and the theory. Indians, like other African Americans, have been treated by the writers of history as invisible. Their contributions were denied or handed to others. Were mentioned, their role has been distorted. For example, The Negro Cowboys by Durham and Jones, an otherwise objective study, calls black people who joined the Indians, quote-unquote, renegades, a terrifying term borrowed from Hollywood Westerns to describe vicious killers. The Negro Cowboys also declares every Negro renegade going against the white man, a company of Negro soldiers fought the Indians. This single sentence mangles some important history and understates the number of black Indians by hundreds of thousands. It also suggests slaves should remain loyal to their owners and praise those who fought the Indians. Right? So they call the brothers that linked up with our Gadite brothers, our Choctaw, our Seminole brothers, our Cherokee, our Navajo, our Lonely, all these different tribes of the Blackfoot. When we linked up with them, they were calling us traitors because we were supposed to have some loyalty to the American white man. Crazy. We'll keep going. It is not that the U.S. chroniclers of the past have failed to see a black Indian heritage through the eyes of people of color, for that is understandable. Almost all were white. What is unforgivable is that some have insisted on seeing past events through the eyes of a slave-holding and Indian-killing class that has been dead for more than a century. But omission, not distortion, is the far more serious culprit in hiding the story of black Indians of the Americas. Like omission is leaving something out. It's like lying without giving, without saying anything. So if you just say, uh, what did you do today? I went to the store, and then I went to play basketball when I came home. Well, you forgot to tell them between you going to the store, you robbed the store, then you went to play basketball, then you came home. That's a lying by omission. This is how our oppressors do. They take away the facts, tell you the story, and if you don't see the part that's missing, you don't understand really what happened, right? Observers not expecting to find Africans among Indians did not report their presence. And I'm gonna say Negro. I'm gonna edit this, let y'all know. You saying Africans, we know that hurts my ears. We're not Africans, all right? I'm gonna say Negroes or so-called Black Americans every time I see Africans. So when you read the book, you just know that, right? Observers not expecting to find Negroes among Indians did not report their presence. For example, artist George Hickman painted a magnificent portrait of Chief Osceola when he and other Seminoles were held captive at Fort Moultrie, 1837. Catlin never painted or mentioned Osceola's personal bodyguard of 55 warriors, including 52 Black Seminoles. Had his artistry captured their presence, he would have contributed vastly to our understanding of anthropology and history. I had some empathy for their blindness. During research for my book, The Black West, I kept unearthing frontier documents and photographs that established a significant Black Indian presence on the U.S. frontier. I'm also going to edit that as well as I go along. Instead of saying Black Indians, I'm going to say Native Americans, right? I never fully weighed my evidence, and the Black West gave Black Native Americans minor attention until the third edition. As my private collection of Indian photographs and documentation piled up, it became clear the subject needed fuller treatment. All right, so we're going to skip down a little bit. This unknown American story is deeply rooted in the human currents that shaped our early life. Two parallel institutions joined to create Black Native Americans, Black Indians. The seizure and mistreatment of natives and their land, and the enslavement of the so-called Negroes. In the conquest of the New World, Europeans were determined to use both dark people. 10 whites are not enough to watch one Negro, said Portuguese slave master living in Brazil. In 1735, to prevent slavery and prevent resistance, Europeans developed brutal methods of control and degrading racial policies. There is evidence that European genocidal attacks on Indians in the New World may have an additional explanation besides land, hunger, and greed. Perhaps another reason for eliminating the natives was to prevent their alliance with the Negroes. Colonial Europeans left evidence of plenty that this was often an overriding fear. I have defined Black natives as people who have dual ancestry, or Black people who have lived for some time with Native Americans. When slaves escaped to the woods, joined or began remote communities, they are called by the Spanish term maroon. Okay. Let's go ahead. Chapter 1. That was the intro. Today, most Black Indians do not live in the forests on the broad plains of the U.S. Most do not inhabit government reservations set aside for Native Americans, and many more any more than most Indians do. To be sure, they crowd, for example, the Pine Reservation on New York Long Island, but many more walk the crowded streets of nearby New York City. They are found in abundance in the cement caverns of Boston, Chicago, Denver, Cleveland, and Detroit. A lot of these so-called Black Native Americans are not on the reservation. They're moving around your city. They're living in the ghetto. They're living in the barrio. They're living in your hood. And we are not seeing them as such because it has been covered up. Uh, they have made a long march from farms, woods, and ranches to skyscrapers, subways, and ghettos. Most have arrived with only a faint recollection of their adventurous rural heritage and gallant ancestors. The people they meet in school, at work, or play cannot appreciate their background because they know nothing about it. If you know I have a history, you will respect me. A black Indian student told a conference of New York teachers in 1968. For words still ring true. Those who assume that a people have no history worth mentioning are likely to believe they have no humanity worth defending. An historical legacy strengthens a country and its people. Denying a people's heritage questions their legitimacy. Right? This is what we see as well in the book of Psalms, the 83rd chapter. It says that they will make sure the name of Israel is no more in remembrance. Let's go drop down. On the snowy night of March 5th, 1770, Crispus Attucks, a black Natick Indian, stepped dramatically into U.S. history in Boston. He was the first to fall in the Boston Massacre. Paul Cuffey, a dark-mouthed Indian with African heritage, became a wealthy merchant and shipowner in early Massachusetts. He married Alice of his mother's Wampanoag nation, but his greatest interest was in protecting fellow Black Americans from discrimination in the United States. He became the first Black man to sponsor a migration of U.S. Blacks to Africa. In 1815, he personally paid for and led 38 settlers aboard his ship, Traveler, to Sierra Leone. Cuffey became the father of Black Back to Africa movement in this country. Talks about Frederick Douglass being of mixed background with Native Americans, Langston Hughes. A lot of the people that helped with John Brown, his rebellions, had Black and Native American ancestors. Let's get down. In the early centuries of their life in the Americas, Black Indians often created a society that might have been a model for everyone. It demonstrated that there was another path through the wilderness than the one hacked out by the Europeans, lust for gold, land, and power. The community with bigotry did not rise naturally from American soil, with plain and water. Bigotry and the appetite for it were imported. Right? They traveled before the Atlantic and were quickly transplanted and moved by those who carried them over. If they had been of a mind to, Europeans might have learned something from the dark people they selfishly used. Instead, they gathered these people's precious gifts and offered promises in return. Negroes and Indians followed a tradition that rarely wrote matters down, but held to verbal promises. Europeans wrote many things down, but failed to keep their promises or treaties. Right? Let's see. Okay, here we go. We're going to start here. So, two colonial Brazilian Black Indian communities were commanded by African or Negro women, and another Negro Maroon settlement in 1826 in Brazil was ruled by a Negro woman named Zeferina, who successfully led her forces against towns and plantations in Bahia. With few weapons, these alliances in the woods challenged the footholds Europeans built in the Western Hemisphere. Using guerrilla tactics, they would become famous in China, in Vietnam, in our own country. Red and Black people defeated superior numbers and better equipped foreign armies. This they managed while moving their families out of harm's way. These dark liberators often proved that European rule in the Americas amounted to a thin coat of white paint over a seething dark empire. Before Patrick Henry shouted, "Give me liberty or give me death," Black, Native American, Maroons acted on this notion. Before Thomas Jefferson wrote, "All men are created equal," Black Indians turned a stirring phrase into a hard reality. Before the Declaration of Independence eloquently argued for a people's revolution against unjust authority, thousands of dark-skinned Americans have been fighting tyrants and slave hunters on two continents. Right? Shalom to the sister as well. Enough. Let's keep going. For their audacity, Black Indians faced a repression more ruthlessly cruel than any King George III imposed on the 13 original colonies. They were forced to carry on the longest, bloodiest battle for freedom in the Western Hemisphere. Repeatedly, they persuaded Europeans it was wiser to grant them independence, sovereignty, and liberty than to continue wars. European powers often learned this lesson late, after they had wasted lives and fortunes on the idea that these free colonies could be easily destroyed. Maroon wars outlasted the endless conflicts between rival European states. Neither side gave nor asked any quarter, and prisoners were freed. For their part, Maroons, even when captured, facing a terrible death, tried to protect their village. More than a century ago, a British report in Brazil described how a captured Negro gave such an account of their journey to the settlement that 33 out of the 40 foreign soldiers refused to accompany their captain. To prevent Africans or Negroes and Native Americans from uniting, Europeans played skillfully on racial differences and ethnic rivalries. They kept the pot of animosity boiling. Whites turned Indians into slave hunters and slave owners. So they influenced the Native Americans. We hear this story. Oh, Native Americans owned slaves, and Native Americans were slave hunters. This is under the influence of the so-called white man, and pushing and cajoling and, oftentimes giving them an ultimatum. It's like, hey, if you don't go and get these slaves, then we're going to kill you and your family. And they do that to pit us against each other. No. Yeah. Whites turned Indians into slave hunters and slave owners, and Negroes into Indian fighters. They used us to fight against them. Light-skinned Negroes were pitted against dark-skinned, free against enslaved. Black Indians against pure Africans or pure Indians. So now it's like, okay, you got a Judite father and a Native American mother, or a Native American father and a Judite mother. Now we're gonna put y'all against the ones that don't have parents from the two different tribes. Those who have put history into books have emphasized differences between Negroes and Native Americans. For example, they have stressed that Europeans encountered Indians as distinct individuals and proud members of the nation, and Africans as nameless slaves. Little mention is made of the enslavement of Native Americans, and nothing is said about the cultural similarities between the two dark peoples. In 1984, scholar Theda Perdue said, by emphasizing the actual exaggerated and imagined differences between Negroes and Indians, whites successfully masked the cultural similarities of the two races, as well as their mutual exploitation by whites. And so we're going to close it out. We're not going to go too much further. Let's see if there's anything else. Like I said, we're going to keep it brief, and we'll keep knocking these books down and then chapters information out. Right here. In the United States, Negroes became central in the exploration of the new nation and the development of the mutual fur trade. Because they were now able to build a binding trust among Native Americans, whites employed them as negotiators, and they did not disappoint. Negroes, like Native Americans, cherished their own trustworthiness and saw promises and treaties as bonds to be never broken. In the 19th century, the Black-Indian friendship limped on despite onslaught of white racial policies destructive to both peoples. It still survives in the legends of Native American nations and in the stories and faces of the people. All right. There is another problem in introducing a set of dark frontier heroes. Their love of liberty thrust them against some sainted U.S. figures. So they don't want to tell us this history because if you learn this, you're going to hate the figures that are put on a pedestal in American history. Like Thomas Jefferson, like Andrew Jackson, right? It says, Thomas Jefferson, speaking of Indians, said, "We would never stop pursuing them with war, or one remained on the face of the earth." Andrew Jackson, the first great Democrat to reach the White House, was first in a long line of candidates to win the presidency, boasting of his Indian fighting spirit. He waged a cruel war against Native men, women, and children. He constantly defended slavery, and like Jefferson owned slaves. Save their families, black natives had to fight off posses and armies launched by these national heroes. Distorting racial history, as teachers know, injures dark children. They live with a muted heritage. Despite black Indian contributions to this land, neither black nor Indian children nor their parents have awareness of this legacy. All right, let's go. With her usual precision, and pride, Rosa Faye, a black Seminole living in Brackettville, Texas in 1943, clarified her people's background for pioneer research Kenneth W. Porter. We colored people. I don't say we don't have no Injun blood, because we has. We ain't no Injun. We colored
what
people.
the fuck is this?
Other Americans would benefit from a re-examination of their family trees and a new look at their biological inheritance. The process may yield wonder and gratification once grief and skepticism moved. The ancestors of black natives often created or died in the attempt in American sisterhood and brotherhood we have tried to attain. They did this under terrible circumstances in the face of armed opposition. Have we paid proper attention to the unique model of friendship and loyalty, our common American history from Hudson Bay to Cape Horn might have been different, more peaceful. Our racial problems might have been more easily solved. Even at this late date, we owe ourselves a rereading of this fascinating legacy. Perhaps we can still learn from and act on its lessons. All right? So that's that. I'm going to go to, I'll pick this up at another time. We'll just keep going through this book, and I'll have some highlights and point some of this information out. I'm going to show you this book has got some great pictures. You might not be able to see it too good. I'm not going to upload these pictures next time we get ready for it. But let's see what I got here. You go through the history and record, and you look at black Indians, you'll start to see Negroes all over intertwined with Native American Yadite culture. And that's another new quick bag that they have done is to say that this DNA thing. There was a guy, Henry Louis Gates, who came out and said that he was doing the ancestry and he was told by his family that he was Native American. And when he did the ancestry, he found out that he was of European descent. And he said that anything that there were a lot of lies in the Black community to say that we had Native Americans in our bloodline to justify us, make sense of us being assaulted by the slave master. Now, I do not believe those DNA studies. For one, the thing that's in our blood that makes us quote unquote Negroes is going to be in the same vein of the Native Americans because we come from ancient Israel. You know, that who knows what these scientists are doing, trying to sway or confuse the children of Israel and say that we all are white. Now, that doesn't make any sense for our ancestors to tell us, our grandparents to tell us that we were Native Americans, but it was just to cover up being white. That doesn't make sense. Because if you know anything about black people love to brag about having white. Black people love to brag about being partially French or Creole, Cajun. So that argument doesn't make any sense. We were dealing with the natives. It's always been known, and that's because we're the children of Israel and the Lord's chosen people, man. It's time to gather ourselves together in a nation not desired. Blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, we put our coming to the truth with that. Shalom.